Well, we heard earlier in the service that this last week that the churches in England have been celebrating everyone involved in ministry with children and young people and their families. And I think it's really fitting that the two readings today speak of sowing seeds, watering them, and bearing fruit. The parable today seems quite self-explanatory, doesn't it? And we've heard it so many times before. The growth of seeds and a yield of crop will depend on where they grow. Quite simply, the better the soil, the better the crop. But I'm not really sure that it's that straightforward. Seeds in general represent new life. They hold the promise of new life and transformation. Something so tiny to turn into something so big and beautiful. But I must admit, I find it quite bewildering when I go to a garden centre and I stand there in front of those racks of seeds, contemplating which I might like in my garden. I'm not sure which compost I need to buy, whether I might need a propagator, or whether perhaps I should splash out and buy a greenhouse of some description. Then you have to consider when to sow if you want it to flower at the right time. And then where to sow it. Do you sow it in situ in the ground and hope for the best? Or do you sow it in trays and plant out when the little shoots are less tender? And don't even get me started on pinching out the tips to get bushier growth. I must admit, I tend to miss out that step, and I go straight for the plug plants, or the established ones, or better yet, buy some of the amazing ready-made creations that we get at the plant sale every year. That said, there is something really quite special about watching those first shoots push through the soil, unfurl, and start reaching skywards towards the light. And one year, we went to the effort and grew runner beans, and they were perhaps the nicest I've ever tasted. When we do sow seeds in beds or pots or otherwise, we prepare the soil or the growing medium, choosing which one will give our plants the best chance to grow and to thrive. We place those containers where the light will be optimum. We thin out the seedlings so that they have space to grow. We water and feed and keep the soil free from weeds that might compete for nutrients or to overwhelm those new shoots. The sower in this passage does none of those things. The sower sows seeds because that is what they do. They don't make a judgment about the quality or worthiness of the soil or the potential return for their toil. They don't make a decision to withhold the seed from the path, the rocks, or the thorny land, which are unworthy of even having a chance of growth. They don't return to scare off the birds, to weed or water. They sow. When we consider the many and varied children's ministries that we have at St Wilfrid's, from barn babies, open the book, school visits into church, school assemblies, holiday clubs, youth drop-in, and our provision for children and youth on a Sunday, I think it would be fair to say that a lot of our energy is actually focused on outreach and missional activities within our community and schools. If we were judging our productivity and missional success by the number of children and their families who come to church because of those activities, then a business analyst might say that we are yielding poor returns and should consider focusing our energy elsewhere. Thankfully, this parable demonstrates that God is not so inclined. Jesus is not saying that we should only sow the seeds of the kingdom on fertile soil. He is saying that the message is for everyone, everywhere. But that we should be aware that circumstances may mean that the message is either not heard, the belief is short-lived, or that outside influences drown it out. I think it's important to note that he also says that even fertile soil will have a different yield. In one case 100-fold, in another 60, and another 30. So what is it that makes the difference if the soil is good and the seed is the same? Well, perhaps it's the gardener. If the role of the sower is to sow the seeds, then perhaps it is the gardener who feeds, waters, and weeds. Who is it that nips out the buds to make the plant stronger and bushier, and supports it with a cane if the wind starts to blow and the plant is at risk of damage? Similarly, an individual who is nurtured, supported, guided, and encouraged to grow by those around them will flourish and, in turn, provide that care for others. I believe that much of the work that we are doing in our outreach children's ministry is sowing seeds. Seeds that may or may not flourish, but they may lay dormant for some time. And it's without discrimination or judgment of worthiness. Our in-reach children's ministry tends those young shoots and helps their faith to grow. Now, I am sure that we all have a different story to tell about our own faith, about how we first came to church and how we came to faith. I would imagine that most of us can think of people along the way who sowed the seed and others who have nurtured it. I didn't go to church as a child at all, but I do remember a lady called Mrs. Redfern, who was the deputy head at my middle school, and she taught us hymns and helped us to pray, and she was a huge influence in my life. And when I look back now, I can see that she sowed those seeds. For some young people in this village, individuals here will be that person. They will be that person that sowed the seed. And that makes me smile. So, whether you see your role as that of a sower or a gardener, we want to say thank you. Thank you for making a difference. But I wonder what our yield would look like if we all became part of the gardening team for the Lord in our wider community. Because it's not just about the children. It's about all of us. This parable almost gives permission for those hard times in life. When we're growing quite well, and then the weeds grow around us and choke us and make us doubt our faith. But when we have a team of gardeners around us who help to strip away the thorns and support us and stake us and say, it's okay, we're in this together, I think we grow more. So maybe we can join that gardening team for the Lord in order that we may truly reap what we sow in Jesus' name. Amen.